Hello everyone, welcome to Gamevine. My name is Marissa.
And my name is David.
And today we are here reviewing the game Agents of Smersh by 8th Summit Games. Agents of Smersh is a cooperative board game experience in which you are chasing the Agents of Smersh all over the globe in an effort to thwart their terroristic plans.
And you're basically trying to defeat Dr. Lobo. And this is a game that is a storytelling game. So if you're familiar with the Goosebumps books where you choose your own story, you would probably, and you like that, you would probably like this type of game. And the theme, of course, is something that I really like. And in our gaming group, I'm super excited to have Marissa on the table, might I add. And it's one of the reasons I brought her on is because we played the game Tales of Arabian Night, right? And that is the kind of same storytelling game with less gameplay and or strategy. But we like this type of thing. We grew up reading those Goosebump books and choosing our own story, and we had fun with Tales of Arabian Night, though there was something that was missing. I did like how you just played the story and you watched your character kind of coast through it and stuff might happen, but you really didn't have any control and there wasn't much game there. Well, when I heard about Agents of Smersh had the same kind of idea, but a little more gaming to it, I was super excited because, I mean, I liked Tales of Arabian Night, but agent theme with storytelling, I mean, that's a home run for me. The other thing that I want to add is this box is extremely heavy, and it is because of that huge book that's in it. I'm going to show you it in a second, which has over 1,600 encounters. Talk about replayability. You have it in this box. So without further ado, let's show you what comes in this box, and then I'll show you how to play with minimal things that I'll leave out. I'm not going to go over the whole thing, but basically, let's just show you how to play this storytelling game. But first, let's show you what comes in this box. So the first thing that we want to go over is this big book of encounters. Now there is almost 300 pages in here, 1,600 encounters, and I'm not going to go over too much because there is a lot of delicate information in here that would attribute to the theme when it comes to this game, and I would rather you experience it yourself. So that's the first component, very thick book. Then we are going to go over the cards. You have the status deck. Now this is going to help you with statuses, and it might be tough, and it'll tell you on the cards what it does. Then we have the fate deck. This is used for multiple things. You're going to use it for these numbers and find out what you're going to be getting in the encounter, and you can use it for gambling. So it has a second thing that you'll be doing. You'll be using it for other things as well. This fate deck is heavily used. Then you have the villain cards, and of course it basically shows you what you're going to be doing on your villain phase, and sometimes you might have to move Dr. Lobo closer to defeating you. The last full-size cards that we're going to have here, and these are the actual encounters on different continents. So you have Asia, North America, South America, Europe, and then Africa. So you have one for each continent, and you're going to be drawing these when you're on said land. Then the tiny cards here, these are top secret cards. Now these are always going to be a good thing to have. They're going to give you an ability or something that you can alter the game with. Now that we've went over the cards, let's go over the cardboard components. So the first cardboard component that we have here are the little circles. Now there are different ones, location ones with the bad guys on it. They got the intel with different kind of intel. Then you have the UN transport, which I'll go over those later. Then you have the character standees that come with their actual plastic standees. And you have the advanced skill tokens here as well. Then you have the injury tokens and the very small airport close tokens. Now all this cardboard is nicely done. They could have been bigger, but I'm not complaining too much. The last few components that we have here, this bag here, very nice. You're going to be drawing the dice out of here. Then you have this wooden pawn marker. This is Dr. Lobo himself. And then you have the little wooden chits. And I could take or leave these, but they do a good job on what they are assigned to do in this game. And the last one that I have on screen here are the dice. Now these are my favorite components. Very chunky, nicely done dice that are indented and painted. Now I'll tell you what these do a little later, but the last few things that we have here I don't have on screen. These are the character boards. These are the bad guys. These are the henchmen for Dr. Lobo, and there are 4 of them. Then you have Dr. Lobo's chart. Now I do want to add, this is the second rendition, and 8 Summit made this copy, so this is a bit different. So if you've seen the first copy of Agents of Smersh, this board was a bit bigger and had a picture of Dr. Lobo on it and some flavor text. But you know what? I really am not complaining there at all, because this does what it needs to do, and I don't need all the fluff, right? And then lastly, we have the actual player character boards, and those are done on thick cardstock, nothing special. They are double-sided. They have the character on the very back, and then you have the rule books. The one thing I do want to have, this reference page, this is another thing that you're going to be using quite often, and this is going to correspond with the actual encounters. Okay, so I know that was a mouthful. You have the map up here lastly, and we're going to go over that right now, and I'll show you how to play. Let's go. Okay, so this is the game setup. I know it takes up quite a bit of table space, and it does look pretty convoluted, but I assure you, the game is pretty streamlined once you learn how to play it. I have the Dr. Lobo chart over here, and he's set up on the start. I have all 4 of his henchmen on level 1, and I'm going to be playing this for a 2-player game, and there are other things that you do to even the game out. You'll add intel, and you'll bump up one of the henchmen to level 2, but I'm not going to be going over that kind of stuff, because again, I did say that I won't be going over all the rules. I will give you a flavor of the game through this breakdown, though. So, let's start the game. Okay, so like my wife said, our goal is ultimately to take down the agents of Smersh and or Dr. Lobo. Now you can see his chart over there, and the aim of the game is to beat him by collecting this much intel. Now, along our travels, we're going to get some of these intel, and we're going to be putting them in this little pool here. The problem is when we get the intel, we put it down face down here, so we don't know which one we have. Now, when we do encounters or special things happen, we'll get to choose to flip these up if we want. And right there, I have a walkie-talkie, as you can see. But what we want to do is have enough intel currently when we trigger the end game to beat Dr. Lobo. So if he were to move, and there's going to be certain cards in the villain deck that will make him move. If you fail an encounter, you'll draw a villain card and move him that appropriate many spaces, and there'll be other things that trigger that. But where he stands is how much intel of that type that you have to have. Anything over is just gravy. So we have one walkie-talkie, and let's say he's on the 3rd space here. We just need our 2 guns, and we can keep trying to draw more intel to get those 2 guns. So getting intel, let me show you how this works. Say there was intel here, and she's just going to move. Now you will move onto it, and you just will simply pick it up and put it into your pool. Now again, it's going to get harder, and you will do this number instead of the no intel when you do your encounter, and this might allow have you do something that was out of your realm, and you will fail, and it will get much harder for you to win the game. So that's how intel works. And also with your special objective here, you can go to the city, and it acts just like an intel. You will immediately take your prize, whatever you want, and I'll let you go over what you get. Flip over your fate card, and now you only have one more special objective that you can do, and once it happens, you're exhausted. And one other thing that you can do with intel is, instead of picking it up and putting it into your pool, you can just discard it to put a location out wherever you want. When you put intel and or locations out, you'll flip the top fate card and see where it goes. This is where it's going to be in Nairobi. I'm just going to throw it here because I don't feel like looking for it. And now this location acts as if your intel, but instead of doing the encounter, you're just going to do what it says to do here. Now you're going to test your spycraft for level 1, and you need 1, and if you pass, you get 1 intel, and it gets harder as you actually beat him. So on level 2, if you were to beat him at level 1, he would go to level 2, and now you have to test this here. Once you beat him all the way from level 3, you'll flip him over and you'll get something special. Now, how do we trigger the end game, you ask? Well, those have to do with the henchmen. So these are Dr. Lobo's 4 henchmen: Darling, Mr. Big, Pierre, and Federo Maximov. And you have to defeat these guys in the appropriate amount of times. According to the players, in a 2-player game, you have to defeat them 4 times. Now, you can defeat any of them 4 times. You can defeat her like all 3 times, and then Mr. Big once. It doesn't matter. Once you defeat them, though, you will move the marker up on this location track, which I forgot to mention earlier, and it starts off the board, and you'll keep moving it up until you reach the appropriate amount of players right here, and it says player 2. Once you hit this mark, you trigger the end of the game, and if you have enough intel over here in your intel pool that's set up for wherever Dr. Lobo is, you win the game, and the game ends immediately right when you get to this location that finalized it. Now, the thing is, if you don't have the correct intel, you cannot go back. You lose, Dr. Lobo succeeds, and the game is over. So you have to be extremely sure when you move the location the 4th time defeating one of these henchmen that you have the appropriate amount of intel. You also can beat the game by defeating all 4 of these henchmen 3 times, which I do not recommend, and so does the rulebook. It would be extremely hard, and I don't even know if it's possible. The way that we've played it, we haven't even come close. So now that you know the basics of the game, let me show you how a turn breaks down. So the first thing you do on your turn is move. You can move up to 2 spaces where you want with the lines connecting, or you can move from an airport to another airport that's on the board, anywhere that you want. Though the problem is, like I showed you before, there will be these little tokens here, and as you're drawing villain cards, they're going to be closing down these airports, so it won't be as easy to get to certain places. Now the thing is, you have to take your whole turn to fly. You can't move and then fly. So there are other ways to get extra moves. If you, use these UN train tokens, you can move 1 extra. If you use a resolve, you can move 1 extra. So you can fly and then move 1 more if you want. And there are other spaces here that have train emblems on them. And if you have a train token, you can move to any one of those if you use it. So that's what you're going to be doing on your turn. You'll move, and then you'll have an encounter phase. The one other thing that I do want to add, if you move into the ocean, your turn immediately stops, even if you have more moves. So keep that in mind. Okay, so you're drawing an encounter card, and it's always going to be the continent that you're on. So he is in Africa, so we'll draw an African encounter card, and then we'll do what it tells us to do from there. So the first thing we want to look at, of course you can read the title if you want, but it's not necessary, is we're going to look at this number and read this off to the person that's going to be reading the encounter to our left. So we're going to be passing this big book around, and we're also going to be passing this little guide group reaction sheet around too. So you'll look at the number, tell the person to the left this number, and then you look at the letter. Now this is your point to look and choose one of these reactions. You can negotiate, you can sneak attack, you can reason with, act unconcerned, lie, or be honest when it comes to F. The one thing I didn't add is the advanced skills token here. Now your character will have a few of these, and these things might add up to you passing the encounter just outright without having to roll, which I'm going to get into in a second. So it is important to look at your special skills and try to see what might line up with that. So like seduction, you might, for F, you might want to pick, I don't know, negotiate or act unconcerned or be honest. I don't know. One of those might correspond with seduction, and you'll be able to actually just beat the encounter. But now let's keep going through this encounter. So now that we've read the number off, we've looked at the letter, and we've picked, let's say, just 1, we will say, okay, now I have 41. I'm picking negotiate, so that's 0.1, and then we pick a fate card. Now this is the last thing we'll do. Each encounter is going to consist of 3 numbers, and if there's intel, you're going to pick 3. If there's no intel, you're going to pick 1, and this is for the ocean, which has its own thing by itself, which I'll let you learn that. It's basically you're going to be rolling this dice and it's random. So you'll then say it has no intel, so I'm going to go with 44.1.1.1. Once we've done that, we will, the left person of you will open up to that number, and the numbers are up top here, and then they will read this out loud to you. Alright, so now that we flip to 44.1.1 right here, you're going to be reading this out, and you're going to be reading to the person that has the encounter. But I'm going to hand this off to my wife because, well, she does it better. Go right ahead, babe.
When a warlord discovered you sneaking around his palace, he dumped you in an arena. You wake to see a huge woman with a whip walking towards you, glaring. She has biceps bigger than your thighs and a growl like a tiger. Say hello to Desdemona, blares a loudspeaker. Can we talk about this, you ask, but Desdemona picks you up and throws you 10 feet across the arena.
So now the book says right here, this is where you'll be testing stuff. So you can pass with if you have adventuring and or speed as a special skill. If you don't have those, you have to test your athletics +1. Now normally when you're taking a test, only one gun is required to actually pass. Now, let me go over the dice now that we're here. This is a fail, this will heal you, and this one, of course, will take an injury. Now, when you take an injury, bad things will happen, but I'll let you get into that on your own. Alright, so we're going to be testing this person's athletics. I know you can't see it that well, but she has 2 in here. Now, you're always going to be rolling this gray dice. It only has 1 chance to succeed, though you're going to be drawing as many dice as the number of what you're testing. So she's going to draw 2 more dice from this bag here. And there are different colored ones. Some are better than others, like this green one has more success on it, and this red one has a 50-50 chance. Now, the mission said you get the athletics +1, so anything that says negative or positive, you get to do that, and you have to. So in this case, I'm going to be rolling 4 dice to try to get, 1 success. Now, other ones will have brackets that say you have to do more successes, but normally it just takes 1. The bad thing about rolling more dice is you might get injured, and if you get knocked out all the way, you're going to have to wipe your character board, and Dr. Lobo is going to get a huge advantage. So she successfully did this mission with shining colors. So once a person has passed or failed, you're going to go ahead and read off whatever happens. In this case, she passed, and we're going to read, you scurry around her, and the crowd jeers, and you finally get dusty and throw in her eyes, and you basically beat her if you pass, and you get whatever it says here. Now, it's going to be advanced skills, or upping your skill, or getting a card, and this one is tough, which is in the status deck, and there's a whole bunch of those kind of cards. But if you were to fail, you would have to take a villain card, and the villain cards are broke down like this. They have a number on them, and they also have the top here at the end of turn, because you're going to be drawing a villain card at the end of your turn every time. But if you fail, you have to look this number. It does have flavor text, and then you got to do whatever it says here on the Dr. Lobo track over here. So we would actually get a good one and go down -1, though there are +2 and +1, and it could get pretty hairy if you fail out a quest. So that's what you would do if you fail, and if you were to pass. Now we're going to go on to the next phase of the turn, which is the villain phase. Again, like I said, once you have done your encounter, you will draw this one here, and you'll read the end of turn. And this is where airports are going to close, and intel is going to be taken off the board. And this is how intel is also going to get placed on the board. The one thing I want to tell you about intel, there is something called intel overload. If there is a whole bunch of intel on here and it gets to a certain point, you take all the intel off the board, you have missed your opportunity, and then you just add 1 location to the board, which is a bad guy, and that is something that you're going to need, but you want to try to get that intel before it goes into overload. So this one here says just remove intel from Europe and add intel to Lima and Kolkata. So you'll do that, and if there isn't any intel to remove, you won't remove it. So that is a basic breakdown of a turn. You will do a movement phase however you want, using resolve, using the passports, going wherever you want to go. Then you will do the encounter phase. You'll pick your cards, read the book, pass or fail. Then you'll do the villain phase. Draw a card, close down an airport, add intel, take it away. So that is how the game is basically played out. I know that was a mouthful, and I tried to go over as much as I possibly can, and you'll continue to do this until either Dr. Lobo gets to the very last point here, which is an automatic lose, or you beat the henchman the appropriate amount of times to move this location board to where you need it to be, and then you check for your intel to see if you win. So without further ado, now let me tell you what I think. Well, let me and my wife tell you what we think and give this game a grade. Alright, so that was Agents of Smersh, and as I always do, I'm going to be giving this game a letter and or a percentage grade, and I settled on an 85, which is a strong B. And I might be a little biased. I like storytelling and I like secret agent games. Before I get into why I like it, we'll have my wife tell you what she thinks and grade it herself. So what are you going to do?
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and give this game like 1.5 thumbs up, if that's a scale.
Okay, yeah, fine, that works.
I'll be honest, I'm not a huge fan usually of longer playing games, and this is a 1.5 to 2 hour range game.
Sure.
However, that being said, I really enjoyed it. The storytelling component kept me engaged the entire time, and I really liked the different scenarios that came up in the encounters.
Yeah, it progressively got crazier, and sometimes you're abducted out of nowhere. You could be in like the ocean and just get abducted.
At one point I got abducted to Japan, which foiled my entire plan.
So what is your favorite thing about this game? What really gave you that 1.5 thumbs. What was your favorite thing?
I mean, I really like the theme, and I like that storytelling element, and the fact that it's a cooperative game. Those are usually more enjoyable for me, too.
Yeah,
So,
well, I think that's a huge plus. I mean, where Tales of Arabian Night, you were just kind of having your own little offset solitaire adventure. This one, you're really trying to work together and beat this evil doctor. So, with that being said, how does this compare to Tales of Arabian Night for you? Which one would you rather play?
honestly, even though Tales of Arabian Nights is a little less in time commitment, I still would rather play Agents of Smersh. It's just more fun for me.
Yeah, I mean, you really do like shorter games because you don't want to really invest so much time. So that's high praise from you. I mean, at least I know that.
I do like there are a lot of components to the game.
It does seem a little complicated and convoluted at first, right?
But not really, right? Because it's like as soon as you understand the purpose and function of all the components, it makes sense, it clicks. There really isn't anything that feels unnecessary.
Right, everything feels like it's moving along on a nice, steady pace, and like you said, it belongs. And basically what you're just going to, once you get the hang of it, you're just going to be passing this book around in that reference sheet and just playing the game, because it doesn't get in the way. Now, I think that the reason why it does look kind of complicated is because most boards that have the whole world map on them, that's kind of intimidating. But like she said, once you get into it, the components or the complication of the game just move out of the way and let you play. Now my thoughts. So with the components, they are pretty good. The board has a little kind of one tone of green and blue and brown, so it's there. It has a purpose, and the standees are decent. I like the plastic bits. Most of the time you can't fit these in here without ripping your little cardboard components, but they did a good job there. And of course the dice are really done well, and the cards are so. That had a good grade for me component-wise. I think where this game shines most is just the storytelling aspect. At one point, I was in Africa, and I was just getting pummeled in the face by some no-shoes-wearing guy that was huge, and I tricked him and said, your shoelaces are untied, and I was able to actually succeed. He looked over for a brief second, even though he wasn't wearing shoes, and I threw dust in his eyes, and I completed and won the quest, even though I took an injury. So stuff like that it really kept me engaged, though the win rate, I would say, is about 50-50. We played this about 4 times, and we only won half the time. And this game can really, turn on a dime. On our first game that we played, we had the intel that we needed. We had everything set up the way that we needed to go, and my wife played the gambling, and she was supposed to lose, and she won, which then just all hell broke loose at that point. We lost the intel that we basically were trying to earn, and we had to go get more and complete more tasks, and we thought that we were going to win. And every time that we kept getting closer, our current airport was shut down, and we just couldn't fly to our point, and we were just like, oh! But I like that it's a bit harder, because it does have a satisfying feeling to it when you finally beat it as a crew. The one other thing, I didn't go over gambling in the review part of the video, but I just mentioned it now. Basically, what you're going to do is draw 5 cards, and then you'll have certain things that you can go over. You can discard 1 if you want, or discard 2 if you have the ability, and then you will play poker in the traditional sense, and you'll use the little icons up here. Pairs, straights, full houses, that kind of stuff's going to fall into play. You'll want to win most of the time, but in our case,
and it only comes up every so often in the encounters. It's not something, we only encountered that scenario one time in an entire gameplay.
Yes, absolutely, and it was at the very end. So I think having a 2-tone card and all these kind of things really works so well. And I can't say much more about this game. I enjoy storytelling, and I would be down to play this game again if you wanted to play it. I mean, that's basically the highest praise from me that you can get. So
I look forward to experiencing this gameplay with more characters and more players involved.
Right,
that's going to change the dynamic quite a bit.
It was just me and you, and we played it over and over again to play test it. And 2 players is fun, but again, it does give you a few things, like it gives you intel and it gives you a few other things to kind of balance it out. Like she said, though, bigger games of this, having everyone hear that I'm getting punched in the face as blood runs down out of my nose and everybody else is laughing would be such a great dynamic. So I agree there, and I really can't wait. I mean, that story, I'm just, like, you're gonna remember what happens in this game most of the time. Sometimes you might want to forget, but you're gonna remember the experience, which is one of the reasons why I just love this game. So thank you so much for joining us on today's review of Agents of Smersh. And I've been Dave, and this is my secret agent wife,
Marissa.
And until the next time that we see you, have a great rest of your day and a great time with all that you play. We're out.